The first day we participated in the ceremony, and we moved on to some of the scanning on the next day using GPR and other techniques.
Tonight, a northern British Columbia community embarks on a dark search for suspected unmarked graves.
I could see us trying to seek out and hire more Indigenous staff to create a safer space for Indigenous youth.
There's some young people with some bright ideas on how to deal with homelessness.
I'm always hoping to eventually move up the ranks.
And hopes of playing in the big league are alive and well in Montreal. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in British Columbia, where a search for unmarked graves at the former Alberni Indian Residential School started this week. The Sechot First Nation says children from over 100 First Nations attended the school. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
The chief of Sechot First Nation says a search of the former residential school near Port Alberni is underway. Chief Wamish says the search is being done by the company Geoscan, but it is being led by school survivors and hereditary leadership, according to their ceremonies and protocols.
And so the first day we participated in the ceremony, and we moved on to some of the scanning on the next day using GPR and other techniques that they have at various priority areas in the community that have been identified through research or through interviews with survivors.
The Alberni Indian Residential School ran from the late 1800s until the 1970s. It was run by the Presbyterian Church, then the United Church, and Indian Affairs. Children from more than 100 First Nations attended the school. Chief Wamish says the search is all about the children.
It's really for them. It's really to justify what I think they've been saying all along. As children, we grew up and we heard about these stories, and many of survivors' children or survivors have always talked about these stories about the children who didn't make it home for various reasons. This is going to help solidify what they've been saying for a long time. And again, we consider it a sacred responsibility to do this and help them get the answers.
Wamish thinks it is important for the media to keep highlighting the stories of residential schools so survivors know accountability is ongoing.
Because that isn't just for the education for non-Indigenous people. That's to make sure this story stays alive so that survivors know that it's not just falling off the plate of governments and Canadians, that it's always on their mind that, hey, this happened not so long ago in our history. And we need to educate future generations, not only so it doesn't happen again, but so they always know what happened.
This week's activity of the school grounds is the first phase of multiple searches. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
The City of Ottawa is moving ahead with plans to build a $3 billion hospital just west of downtown. But not everyone is on board with where the new Ottawa hospital is going to be built, including one of the city's main Indigenous organizations. APTN's Fraser Needham explains.
Ottawa needs a new hospital. The existing Civic Hospital is close to 100 years old and it is crumbling. Council has signed off on a new site near what the locals call the Experimental Farm, a sprawling 400 hectares of green space and trees good for walking and cycling. Ricky Adams says she fell in love with the area when she moved to Ottawa from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, 4 years ago.
And here in Ottawa, it's such a beautiful city, a lot of green space and so much to discover just within the city itself. So whether it's cycling or walking, we love to walk around and view what the city has to offer.
Adams is also co-chair of the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition. They're primarily against a proposed 4-story, 2,500 space parking garage. Hundreds of trees will have to be destroyed, but City Councillor Jan Harder is having no part of this argument. Here she is at a council meeting earlier this year.
So take your trees and your freaking parking lot and shove it where the sun doesn't shine.
Adams says comments like those make her wonder how serious Ottawa really is about reconciliation.
Just goes to show their part on wanting to take part in reconciliation and how they unfortunately view Indigenous people and our culture and our ways. With respects to shoving the trees up our blank.
The site is in New Democrat MPP Joel Harden's constituency. He says a number of groups are opposed to the new hospital as well. And an above-ground parking garage was not part of the original plan.
So we were told last May that this would be a 4-story, airport-sized parking garage across the street from a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We were told that. The hospital had said previously it would be 1,100 spaces buried underground.
In an emailed statement, the City of Ottawa told APTN that every effort will be made to preserve as many trees as possible. And for every tree removed, another 5 will be replanted. Also in an emailed statement, the Ottawa Hospital told APTN extensive consultations have been done on the new hospital site. This includes with an organization called Indigenous Peoples Advisory Council. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
It's being called a milestone for education for First Nations in Quebec. In Ottawa, Mohawk Territory, Canada signed an agreement that gives more self-determination to First Nations in the province. The agreement may also provide a measure of protection against recent French language law reforms in the province. Tom Fenario has those details.
Yodonardio Lahash is speaking Kanyagahaga, the language synonymous with the Mohawk people. It's also endangered, which makes Thursday's signing of a 5-year, $1.1 billion regional educational agreement all the more significant.
The students within our First Nation communities will definitely benefit from the regional fundings agreement.
The agreement has over $310 million in new funding for 22 First Nation communities in Quebec. The money will go to improving school transportation, staff recruitment and retention, and perhaps most importantly to kids like Yodan Hardio, control over school curriculum, such as language instruction. AFN Regional Chief Ghislain Picard called the agreement the culmination of 35 years of advocacy.
One of the privileges of having around for so many years is that you get to see very important, as you call them, Madam Minister, milestones.
But there are other battles looming.
It's a matter of time before we lose the presence of French in Quebec.
Quebec's recently passed Bill 96 will require college students in the province to pass more French courses and will limit spots in English colleges, meaning that schools on First Nations might have to make difficult decisions about what language to teach when it comes to preparing students for higher education. Picard gave an example he was recently made aware of, involving an English-speaking First Nations woman pursuing a career in social work.
She has learned, this is recent, that the classes or the courses who were before available in English are now only available in French. This is a prime example of the kind of situations that our people face. And I will add this, I mean, we haven't closed the door on potential options to intervene on 96.
During questions, Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haidu stopped short of condemning Bill 96. She did, however, say that giving First Nations more self-determination will provide a measure of protection against the bill.
I think it is important for us to stand with Indigenous people as the federal government to make sure that they continue to have those rights, that they have the rights to educate their children in ways that are going to result in the success of children.
But success can be measured in many different ways. At least now, many First Nations in Quebec will have a say in how it's defined. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Kahnawake, Mohawk Territory.
A long-running powwow in Kamloops has gone viral on social media for all the wrong reasons. The powwow rules have been called out for being transphobic and for what some say are colonial blood quantum requirements. Leanne Sanders has that story.
The outrage started earlier this week after the Kamloops powwow in British Columbia released their rules. Social media posts skewering the rules have been popping up since they were posted, including this more serious one that reads, "The rules of Kamloops powwow are ridiculous. What happened to every child matters. My two-spirited child matters. Your powwow used to be a favorite of mine to travel to. I won't take my child where she is shamed by a toxic powwow committee that approved rules that exclude her. Disgusting, Kamloops." The committee has posted a videotaped apology, but says it may be hard for them to recover from the harm done. They tried to explain where those rules came from.
An elder got up to speak about the woman's jingle dress and how the gender needed to be corrected, that it needed to be the woman. And then the rules were changed from there. And then also with respect to being a quarter First Nations, at the time there was a young man who came over from Germany, and he danced and he placed at our powwow, which upset a few people.
The apology and explanation may not go far enough, with contestants pulling out of the powwow and even some volunteers refusing to take part. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Thanks, Leanne. We want to hear what you have to say about the Kamloops powwow rules. Here's how you can continue that conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time to step aside for a quick break. Coming up, looking to remove the obstacles that the youth face.
So we're really excited to be taking part in this research so that we can help identify some of the barriers that Indigenous youth face.
Welcome back. Well, it is going from flooding to wildfire season. A community in northern Manitoba has issued an evacuation order due to an ongoing forest fire in the area. The order for Puckatawagan was issued shortly after 3 p.m. Thursday. The community is about 700 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg and is only accessible by plane and train. Elders and chronically ill residents are being flown out first. Evacuees will be sent to communities ranging from Cranberry Portage, the Paw, Winnipeg, and Swan River. An aggressive wildfire is spreading just west of Lytton, BC, the same community that was all but wiped out by a massive blaze just last summer. Flames were first reported Thursday afternoon on the west side of the Fraser River, and at last word, the fire has grown to 250 hectares. Dozens of properties and 6 reserves at the Lytton First Nation are being evacuated. Just 2 weeks ago, Lytton held a special ceremony to mark the 1-year anniversary of the deadly wildfire that destroyed much of the village. A Southern Ontario youth centre is hoping to create change with the help of a research project by finding ways to remove barriers and engage Indigenous youth. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
Youth Opportunities United in London, Ontario has a lot of resources to offer, including an employment centre that offers work to young people who are seeking experience.
So youth are able to participate in the employment center to work at any of our social enterprise locations. So we've got the You Made It Cafe just next door. We've got the wood shop and the recycling center. And then there's also the kitchen at the shelter that youth are able to pick up shifts at.
But what the center doesn't have is an inviting space for Indigenous youth, especially for those who are homeless. According to the Youth Development Councillor, that's why YOU is collaborating with Western University in a research project.
It's called EQUIP, so it's all about equity in healthcare. So they're trying to adapt it to fit in a homelessness atmosphere. So we're really excited to be taking part in this research so that we can help identify some of the barriers that Indigenous youth face when accessing homelessness service and sort of amend those barriers and figure out why is this happening and how can we fix it.
It's a 10-week head-to-heart project that research fellow and nursing student Rachel Raddick is working on. She's hoping it will give youth a voice.
Because the research fellowship is a shorter span with only being 10 weeks, we are hoping to be able to work with the youth to be able to recruit, to create a Indigenous leadership council within Youth Opportunities Unlimited to be able to uplift and empower youth voices, to be able to be the voice of that change to create safer spaces for Indigenous folks.
And Sarah Palmer sees some changes that could be made as well.
I could see us incorporating more Indigenous imagery in our buildings. I could see us trying to seek out and hire more Indigenous staff to create a safer space for Indigenous youth. I could see us finding funding to be able to support youth who want to go to the reserves surrounding London to visit their families, participate in ceremonies.
Raddick is hopeful to have an Indigenous Leadership Council in place by the end of the project. She says having Indigenous youth at the table will mean real change. Annette Francis, APTN National News, London.
Time to step aside for another quick break. Coming up, some serious Indigenous talent at the Montreal Canadiens training camp.
Just trying to be a sponge here. Of course, NHL is the goal, but it takes time, and I just want to improve my game here.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. There's a new sculpture on display at the historic Forks in downtown Winnipeg. This photo is courtesy of Jamie Isaacs. Jamie tells us the sculpture is inspired by the Anishinaabe story known as the Eighth and Final Fire Prophecy. Be sure to check that out in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And I guess Jamie didn't write in there, but she's the one who designed that art installation. You can send your photos to share at aptn.ca, and it might be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 27 in Halifax, 28 for Fredericton, 23 in Kuujjuaq, 20 in Nain, 29 with showers in Montreal, rain and 27 for Val-d'Or, sunny and 28 for Sault Ste. Marie and North Bay. In Northern Ontario, 28 in Thunder Bay, 31 for Sioux Lookout, 29 with showers in God's Lake and Norway House, 31 with rain in Winnipeg, 32 and showers in Dauphin. A sunny high of 35 for Regina, 34 in Saskatoon, 31 in Meadow Lake, rain and 32 for La Ronge. In Northern Alberta, 25 for Grand Prairie, 26 in Peace River, 33 under the sun in Lethbridge, 27 in Edmonton, 23 with showers in Vancouver, sunny and 30 for Kamloops, 21 with rain in Prince George, 20 in Smithers, plus 16, in Old Crow with rain, 18 in Whitehorse, 24 for Yellowknife, 21 and rain in Norman Wells, 5 in Sax Harbor, 15 for Paulatuck, sunny and 19 in Arviette, 18 in Whale Cove and Baker Lake, 8 in Resolute, 16 in Igloolik. Every year, the Montreal Canadiens hold a 3-day development camp for its prospects. And you don't have to be a fan of the team to appreciate that this year's camp has some serious Indigenous representation. Tom Fenario has that story.
While much of the excitement regarding the Montreal Canadiens development camp surrounds recent first over pick Juraj Slafkovsky, off in another corner of the rink, two players are working to make a name for themselves. The shooter is Israel Mianskum of the Cree Nation of Mistissini. Mianskum plays for the Sherbrooke Phoenix of the Quebec Major Junior League. He's here on a tryout.
Just trying to be a sponge here. Of course, NHL is the goal, but it takes time, and I just want to improve my game here.
The goalie Mianskum is shooting on is Emmett Croteau, a Métis from Bonnyville, Alberta. Croteau is a recent 6th-round pick of the Habs.
I was in Edmonton. I was sitting down, getting dressed actually to go on the ice. So I was aware the draft was going on. I just had my phone by me, but I wasn't really sitting there watching it. So just kind of doing my routine, stretching and stuff, and went to get dressed, and the phone rang. So it was was an amazing experience. My dad was there with me, so I ran out and we shared a hug and shared a moment, so it was really special.
Corto says he likes to keep an eye on other Indigenous players and cites Jordan Tutu as an inspiration, as well as a current member of the Canadians.
Being a Carey Price fan growing up and now being here, it's a pretty cool thing.
Meanwhile, Charlie Washipavano is sharing the same ice, but he's a prospect of a different kind. Based nearly 1,000 kilometers away in Chisasibi, Washipavano runs the Cree Nation Bears program, an elite team with the best players from the 9 Cree communities in Quebec. While he says he's here to take what he learns back home, he's also got an eye on his future.
I'm always hoping to eventually move up the ranks. It's something I've looked at in the last few years, but if an opportunity presented itself where I could, possibly take on a challenge, I'd obviously take a long look at it. I'm obviously based at home. I'm settled at home, but in the hockey world, when chances like this come up, you jump at them.
For many here, the Indigenous presence at the Canadians Development Camp is about more than just career advancement. Frequently, when Indigenous players make the news in Quebec, it's because they've been subject to racist taunts and jeers, such as this 2018 game featuring 13 and 14-year-olds in Quebec City. Nonetheless, Washipavano is optimistic that incidents like this are becoming increasingly rare.
It's pretty tough to navigate at times. It's not just for individuals, but obviously for teams. I'm part of the Cree Nation Bears program back home. We obviously still go through some hurdles year after year, but I think the more you have dialogues with people, the more it helps, the more it kind of flattens the playing field. But at this point, I think things are always going to get better.
For his part, Nyanscombe says he hasn't experienced racism playing the game he loves. Right now, he says he's just living his dream.
I think every kid in Quebec is always a big fan of the Habs, and so just to get the opportunity to be here and to put on the jersey was really special.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Brossard, Quebec.
Very cool. Good luck, boys. Sad news to leave you with tonight. Pat John, the actor who played Jesse on The Beachcombers, has died. John was a member of the Seashelt First Nation near Vancouver, British Columbia.
You and Nick don't need any help on the boat, do you?
Afraid not, Pat. Maybe in a couple of weeks. Things are slow. Not much work anywhere.
No problem. I just thought I'd ask. Well, thanks for everything, Jesse.
Pleasure, Pat. Oh, by the way.
Yeah?
We're having a little celebration here later. Sort of a tribute to Molly. Can you, Jack, come over?
Oh, yeah, sure.
He was, of course, best known for his role as Jesse on The Beachcombers, the long-running comedy drama series that aired Sunday evenings on CBC television for 387 episodes over 19 seasons, from 1972 to 1990. He died at a relative's house in Seashelt on Wednesday. The cause of death has not been made public, but friends and family say his health has not been good for a long time. Pat John was 69 years old. 19 seasons, that is something else. Condolences to all those who knew Pat John. He played such an important role for Indigenous viewers. The Beachcombers is returning to APTN this fall. Looking forward to that. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.